He's the district engineer. Yeah, he lives in No, it is. I got a video instead. Yeah. When I don't do my job, you know. That's helpful.
I think it's necessary.
Yeah, that was $6,000. So that was funded originally.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't want to put your face in that.
Well, they are
The same room, yeah.
So we're part of the town.
Order for January 25th, 2022. We'll start off with the roll call.
Jason Thielen present.
Greg Gordon, present.
Kelly Law, present.
Jessica Smuin, present.
Lon Lot, present.
Okay, and then we'll start off with a prayer by Discus Mewin.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful to be able to have this time this evening to set aside to focus on our community, to come together as a council and as citizens to work towards solutions to improve our community. We're grateful for the beauty that we're surrounded with, the natural resources and the kindness of those that live within our town. We're thankful for our neighboring cities, and we're grateful for all the many blessings that we have. And we ask for clarity this evening and guidance and direction as we make decisions and plan for the future. And we ask for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
And then Lon, will you lead us in the Pledge of
Yes, I
Allegiance?
will. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have the consent calendar.
Mayor, I sent a couple clarifications and corrections over to Bonnie on the minutes. Likewise.
I did as well.
And
Okay,
then Shane, anything special about the bond releases?
No.
Okay.
Just development.
Okay,
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar as noted with the changes Greg and Jason and Lon made.
okay, so we have a motion to approve the calendar. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jessica Smewen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to the public comment section of our meeting. We asked, are there any public comments today? Okay, so I don't have to go to this jail. Great. Okay. Item number 4, reports and presentations. We have a presentation by the Timpanogus Special Services District. Did you guys want to come up and introduce yourselves? And so Mr. Del Urkey, who is on my left,
Rich Mickelson.
and Rich Mickelson. So Del Urkey is an Alpine resident who is our representative to the Timpanogus Special Services District. And then Rich Mickelson is the director of the Special Services District.
Yeah. Thank you for having us here, Mayor Merrill and council members. It's a pleasure to be here. I was appointed, I think, in 2014 by Mayor Watkins. So I've been on the board for 8 years. Time flies. But it's been really an enjoyable experience. And Rich, I think we hired Rich, board hired you about 3 years ago.
2018.
2018, okay, yeah, time does fly, 4 years ago. And so he's the district superintendent, and has just done an outstanding job for us. We're really happy to have him leading the ship. What we wanted to do today, we've been tackling some of the bigger issues over the last 4 or 5 years at Timpanogus Special Services District, those being aging infrastructure. And these are probably things that the city of Alpine also wrestles with, but aging infrastructure. The plant was commissioned in 1979, and so it's now approaching 43 years of age. And systems like electrical and mechanical are starting to, their useful life is pretty much expended. And so tackling aging infrastructure has been an issue for us. Of course, over the last few years, growth has just been phenomenal. And so planning for future growth. In addition, we've had some, on the horizon, some additional permit requirements, particularly in the area of phosphorus and nickel. The nitrogen, not nickel, sorry, but phosphorus and nitrogen that we're trying to address. And then the last big issue has been the fact that the plant, when it was originally built, was in farmland, and now it's being surrounded by commercial and residential, and that's caused some issues. And so just the location of the plant, and that, I don't know if you were, some of you are new, but we were sued in, I don't remember what the year it was, for odors because of businesses that are located near the plant. And we ended up with a settlement. I think it was like 2018 or something like that. I can't remember the exact date on that.
It was 5 years ago from last year, so that would have been 2016.
2016, okay. We settled and we had to stop composting and stop taking green waste. And so what to do with our biosolids has been an issue. So those are the kind of the big picture things that we were been wrestling with. And to address those, the board decided to do a master planning approach. And so in 2019, we started a master plan that was looking at 40 years to 2060. And that master plan has, we did it in 2020 and 2021, and now we're starting to actually implement that master plan. And so what we have today is a video that we prepared to kind of give you a highlight of the master plan. And Rich has a brochure on the master plan. And then after we watch the videos, we'll be happy to answer any questions on any topic that you have for TSSD, regarding TSSD. So are we queued up?
I think we are, but I just wanted to say one thing about Dale. So our plant does about 20 million gallons a day. That's what we clean. And Dale has experience, he's retired from a plant that did 100 million gallons a day. So he's 160. So I was even off more. So he has a lot of experience and he's kept me on my toes. When I leave something out, he's quick to, what about this? What about arc flash? What about, and so I'm like, and I have to provide the answer. So he's a great representative for Alpine, just so you know. So thank you. And you have that? Yeah. Sure. 7 minutes. Can you all hear that?
Sorry, audio.
And our intention of preparing this video was so that you could catch up in 2 years of planning and information. So we try to condense everything into just this short video.
Maybe I'll just try this, yeah.
Increases. Our biggest problem or challenge really is planning, financing, building, and maintaining systems to meet that growth and to meet federal and state requirements. Challenge is further complicated by those factors, different time horizons, capital facility projects, sewer assets last greater than.
I could actually hear it better before.
Allocating the cost appropriately, finding a balance between letting future growth pay for itself, things in the future always cost more than the present, with the financial burden of upgrading now to meet needs decades.
Can we start over?
It is difficult to
Start it over?
now.
I haven't got a thing out of it yet, so.
Timpanogus Special Service District, or TSSD, cleans 20 million gallons per day of sewer water for northern Utah County. TSSD met all DWQ permit requirements for more than 10 years without any violations, including the new phosphorus limit set in 2020. This video comes from TSSD's 2020 Master Plan Executive Summary. The problem? All 10 member cities are anticipating population growth over the next 40 years, ranging from moderate to exponential increases. Our biggest problem or challenge really is planning, financing, building, and maintaining collection and treatment systems to meet that growth and to meet changing federal and state requirements. The challenge is further complicated by these factors: different time horizons. Capital facility projects address a 10-year time frame, but sewer assets last greater than 10 years. It's most cost-effective to size collection and treatment systems for a 20 to 40-year time frame. Allocating the costs appropriately. Finding a balance between letting future growth pay for itself, things in the future always cost more than the present, with the financial burden of upgrading now to meet needs decades in the future. It is difficult to pay for things now that will not be needed for 20 or 30 years. Inconvenience and rework. Although the growth will be constant, system upgrades are done periodically. Upgrading for too far in the future puts too much financial burden on present populations. Upgrading too often brings major inconvenience and traffic flow interruptions, along with inevitable rework that can lead to wasted time and money. Changing federal and state requirements. Regulators determine how clean the water needs to be and may set higher standards with substantially higher construction and operating costs. The analysis. We have spent over $500,000 and almost 2 years studying the situation. Each city participated in TSSD-sponsored work sessions and board meetings, sharing their master plans and growth projections. We have compiled and incorporated each city's growth projections and related master plan information to our master plan for the collection system and treatment system. Our objectives were to forecast and lower capital costs, lower operation and maintenance costs, increase flexibility to meet changing state and federal requirements, and to increase capacity to meet future demand. Key points in time in the master plan are at 20 and 40 years, 2040 and 2060. Current flows are about 20 million gallons per day and are anticipated to be approximately 40 million gallons per day in 2040 and 60 million gallons per day in 2060, which is about 1 million gallons per day increase each year. The planning took into account 1, how clean to clean the sewer water. Please see the video titled Cleaning Up Utah Lake. 2, coordination with the 10-member cities. How many times have you seen a new road installed and the next month or year you see it ripped up? 3, federal and state requirements with upcoming more stringent standards. 4, current assets such as age, capacity, capability to meet the current and future federal and state requirements, and flexibility to add or bolt on new systems to meet future regulations. Additional planning included an evaluation of TSSD's current treatment platform compared to other platforms that could be used to meet future demand. Federal requirements. The federal EPA follows the Clean Water Act, or CWA. The EPA delegates authority to the state of Utah to implement the law. Some conditions are required. Permits are given to publicly owned treatment works, or POTWs, by the state of Utah, specifically the Utah Division of Water Quality, or UDWQ, to comply with the requirements. UDWQ determines how clean POTWs need to clean the water, or to put it differently, UDWQ decides what we should do. How to do it is left up to the POTWs. This allows for creativity and ingenuity. Then UDWQ must approve how it's done. It is not certain what the requirements will be in the future. We have a sense of what UDWQ is pushing for and plan to make adjustments. TSSD complies to what UDWQ mandates. Changing standards. Site-specific nutrient standards are being developed for Utah Lake by UDWQ. This process is being called the Utah Lake Water Quality Study, or ULWQS, and has a price tag of $5 million. This study will determine what the phosphorus limit will be for POTWs. If it stays at 1 milligram per liter phosphorus, the PCAD platform will suffice. If it is 0.5 milligrams per liter or lower, more unit operations will need to be added, such as a filter building and the addition of chemical treatment. If nitrogen restriction is added, bolt on step 3 from TSSD's cost versus benefit table. The solution. To keep up with the growth of member cities, the sewer collection system needs upgrading. Implementation of several proposed projects will help resolve capacity challenges and rehabilitate existing lines to extend the collection system's useful life out to 2060. The plant was originally constructed in 1976 with a treatment capacity of 7.6 million gallons per day. Expansion projects in 1984 and 1996 increased capacity to 18.3 million gallons per day. The treatment process was changed in 2013 to a biological nutrient removal process and increased capacity to 30 million gallons per day, allowing lower phosphorus numbers to be met. The key to meeting future demand is upgrading and changing the treatment platform at the plant. In December of 2019, the TSSD board selected primary clarifier and anaerobic digestion, or PCAD, as the next treatment platform that best leverages existing assets and best meets currently anticipated future needs. The PCAD will change the treatment process to add primary clarifiers and anaerobic digestion. The process will break down the biosolids and create sustainable, renewable energy. Additional support systems will be installed, such as odor control systems, side stream phosphorus removal, side stream nitrogen removal, and a sustainable biosolids disposal system, a new disinfection UV system, a tertiary filtration building for additional phosphorus removal, reduced nutrient and solids loading to Utah Lake, and improved overall process reliability. The facility is planned for future expansion to an ultimate capacity of 60 million gallons per day. In a nutshell, we will decommission a nearly 70-year-old plant and add capacity to meet growth and future regulations as we strive to do our part in our community and on this big, beautiful planet. Thanks for your support.
Thanks for working through those challenges. I did want to point your attention to this booklet right here, and I am going to take a few minutes to just kind of show you how this augments the video that we just had. So the first, open the book right there, it tells you why we're doing the master plan, why we needed to take a look at it. So it talks about the rich history, us trying to overcome the biosolids issue of us hauling out 60 tons a day or 60 truckloads a week, and then 40, we reduced that to 40 truckloads a week, adding this PCAD system, and we talked about that in the video with respect to renewable energy and so forth. If you turn the page, it talks more of the reasons why we're doing that. Also on the right-hand side, it talks about the engagement process that we had. You can notice that Lot's pictures in there because he participated in that process. And so we tried to get your input on that. So we took all that information, filtered it in, and that participated in us making the decisions that we did, which were on the next page, which talks about all the different things that we took into consideration. You can see all those, plus, you know, all the things that we talked or discussed and talked about. And if you turn the next page, it talks about the collection systems and what's forecasted to come with those, and some of those different lines and how they play out. The next one I think is very interesting, and that's leveraging our current biosolids program that you can see there. And that shows we were taking a look at how we're going to be able to handle the biosolids, because things seem to be ever changing in that field. So you notice there we have the landfill option, dryer, pelletizer option, and the application process. And also I've brought back up doing composting. And if we can do that and settle again with our with this legal settlement that we had, if we can bring that back, we're trying to introduce that back again. I've met with them. As long as I meet certain conditions and criteria, then they're amenable to that. So we're in that process as well. So just to know that we're working on all the avenues that we can. The next page shows a historic timeline of what we're doing on there and how that works with phase 1, 2, and 3. And we mentioned a lot of price tags on there, but we're only focusing on phase 1 at this point, but we had to have that so we know where we're going, not just, we're going to just build the foundation and not have anywhere to go after that. And then the last page shows you all those different phases, how they come into phase 1, 2, and 3 with some color coordination. So that's the booklet. And if you have questions, you can refer back to that. That's what we're doing as an executive summary for councils like this one. Do you have any questions specifically for me?
Just really quickly on page 10 on that, because I like that biosolids page, but is there any, you have a table there, talks about costs. Is there any revenue recaptured from doing any of these 4 or 5 things?
Revenue as in user rates or revenue as in impact fees? Because the answer is yes to both of those.
Okay, so I'm thinking like, so on-site composting, you're gonna, let's say you did that and you're providing this back to the citizens for free, or they have to pay a certain
Well, it'd be similar to what we've done
yard?
before, but we'll take a cost analysis in that, because when I started 4 years ago, our cost for landfill was about $200,000. And we were composting a significant portion of that. And part of the legal settlement was we would reduce that composting until we phased it out completely, which we finished. And now our next year's budget is $2.5 million to do landfill. So that's what it's costing us, as opposed to previously, we were able to compost that, sell it back to the public. And so there needs to be a cost analysis on that to get the revenue, how much money we would save on that, because it definitely will be reduced.
Yeah, that's what, okay, good. I'm glad you're doing that.
So you understand there was neighboring businesses that were complaining about that.
Oh, I work right across the freeway.
Oh, you are, okay.
Yeah.
Did you sue them?
I did not sue them.
But he was concerned about the odors, which is rightfully so. So we've taken some significant planning in this current plan to control the odors. So everything that we're doing, we're mindful of that, knowing what our neighbors have. So yes. Any other questions? Lon, you asked me some before. I thought we're poignant before the meeting started.
Where I sit on the Utah Lake Commission right now, and the things that are going on with how things are going to be managed there, or what's going to be happening in the future. It's just important that everyone recognizes TSSD is doing very good on managing quality and doing everything they can and should do with providing water back into the lake. I don't know that I have any questions for you other than the things that you did answer for me before. I do appreciate Rich, and I do appreciate Dale, one of our citizens of Alpine, for always being there and taking care of things. So we do. I've been down there many a time, and it's a great run facility. I really
And you're
appreciate
welcome
it.
at any time. And we can create some tours if you'd like. So 3 a.m. is not usually the best time, but sometimes we get called out to be there at 3. So just let us know when you'd like to come for a tour. We're open for that.
I was gonna mention, when you say, are we gonna get any money back? One of the changes of the master plan is changing the treatment process. And that was mentioned in the video PCAD, primary and anaerobic digestion. And anaerobic digestion converts solids that are now going to a landfill at a very expensive rate, turns it into gas, into a biogas. And the master plans, our hope is that we will resell it back to the natural gas grid. And so we're going to get revenue from that. You're going to see some very large tanks. I don't know, maybe in the next 5 years.
We should be done in 7 years.
If you've ever gone to Salt Lake, you see these egg-shaped looking things off to the left side of the freeway on your way to Salt Lake. That's Central Valley's anaerobic digesters. We're probably gonna have something similar to that.
Yeah, that's what we would like.
So you'll see a change in the little horizon there by the plant. We'll have a couple of egg-shaped digesters there, and that's for converting that solid into a gas that we can sell.
So is that what Salt Lake is doing currently? They're selling it back to the grid?
They actually put it in a cogen system and they create power to run their plant.
Oh,
We've chosen not to go that route just due to the cost and also the education of our staff is going to have to be increased. And with the current desire for the gas company to take it, if we get it to them, they'll pay us sufficient funds that it will be to our advantage to sell it to them instead of trying to create our own power and run it that way. We think that would be more cost beneficial for us in the district.
There's a premium for green energy. So
Also, Mayor, I think we ought to introduce Dave Barlow also.
Yes.
Dave Barlow is a citizen of Alpine that works down there, and recognize him because they have a great team, and some of them come from Alpine. So
And he's a former coworker of mine. We were coworkers.
yeah, he's an engineer.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions, Mayor.
yes.
So you went from a $200,000 landfill cost to $2.5 million in the last 4 years.
I don't think we've seen an increase in rates since then. How is that being funded?
Currently through user rates. And that we will conclude a part of our capital facility plan. We will get a new user rate by the end of the year, which is going to have to be approved by the board. So we're absorbing that through our current costs.
Okay. Dell, when that comes forward, you make sure it comes here before the city council so they'll know what's going on, so they can give you input before you vote. That is, I mean, we saw it 2 years in a row, several years ago. It was probably before you were there.
I've heard
Rich.
about it.
2 large increases. I like smaller incremental increases better than large ones. I think the city's kind of took it on the nose a little bit and got the blame for that, even though it's just a pass through to you guys. And I know you needed the revenue, but I'd love it if it's a little more gradual as we go. So hopefully that will be kept in mind as you work on a rate study. The other question on the land application, looks like the approach here was assuming that the district would have to purchase land. Was another option looked at of actually allowing farmers to take the sludge and put on fields that Tssd would not own, which would be a
Yes,
significantly
we did
less
look at that as
cost.
well. As you can see that the cost on purchasing the land would be significant.
Mhm.
So we have looked at that as well. I've actually been in conversation with some large landowners who would do that, whether they, how we would go through that actual process, their concern on Class A versus Class B solids. I don't know if you know, familiar with that, but there are certain requirements that we have to meet on a federal level if it's a Class B solids. These dryer pelletizers is what we're going to, so that we don't have to, we meet the higher level through that Class A solid, and then we can do land application, which minimizes the concern from the farmer's land application process. So I have been doing that as well, so.
Okay. I mean, we've actually applied it years ago at our farm, and our requirement was, I think it was once a year, we had to test soil every foot for 5 feet of depth and, or 3
That's
feet
correct.
or
That's
something
part of
like
the
that.
Class B biosolids
Okay.
process that's required. And you have to also know what crop you're growing and your rotation through, like you mentioned, on a 5-year rotation. So yes, we're familiar with that.
So, I mean, it was beneficial to the land, in my opinion, and it's still happening down my way.
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering about that.
If you have other farmers or that would be interested in this, I'm definitely open to hearing what those are, because that's definitely saves the district money on that, so.
Okay. All right, that's it.
I had a question. So on the capital improvements, what's the plan to fund that? Some of these collection system upgrades and replacements and.
So the collection capital facility plan was completed 2020. I forget, but I have that one. I can send that to you. That's a completed one, how much goes to impact fees and so forth. So that one's all completed. The one we're doing right now is part of the treatment plan portion of this process right here, the master plan, which we just barely finished. So that capital facility plan will be completed by August, September timeframe. And then we will go finish the process with the impact fee report from a financial institution. And then that will say how much of that is going to go to the 10-year plan and then beyond that. So all that will come out of that capital facility plan. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I think so. So the capacity improvements have been, well, let's see. The
What page are you
2030 has been
What page are you on?
page 8.
Okay.
For example, so these have been, so part of it has been completed, but there's another phase coming up, right, for these additional capacity.
That's correct.
And and you'll determine from that what the rate changes would need to be as well.
That's right.
as-
That's why we're waiting for the complete study to be, engineering study to be completed, and then we can do the user rate study. And where here, what I'm hearing is you want a gradual increase, and the thing is, it's going to take us several years to actually, we're in the design process of these. The board will have enough time to look at that and say, well, we just don't have enough money to buy that. Can't buy everything, Rich. You're gonna have to pull some things back, and we'll take that input from the board, but some of these things are a significant change with that primary clarifier anaerobic digestion. It's a phase change completely, not completely, but it's a significant change in our treatment process. What that's doing is we have a pile of biosolids that's about this big that's going to the landfills. Literally, it will cut it in half. And reducing that in half is going to give us that renewable gas that we can sell back. So we're going to incorporate all those aspects of it, but long-term, that's very significant change for the current users to be able to pick up that price tag. And so the board has seen some of those numbers, and Dale can, and if you want, I can come bring that back to you as part of the financial part that you're interested, but Dale's very capable of doing that, but I'm willing to support him if that needs to be. But, you know, essentially, in a nutshell, if I was sitting in your position, how much is it going to cost me and what's it look like? And do we have any savings? And the answer is yes on that. We do have savings that we've been able to put away knowing this is coming, and then that will be used for your portion because you've paid it already. So you're essentially half of your price tag's already been paid for on the master plan treatment upgrade. Doesn't count the collection, so it's kind of short sighted to say I'm got it all in one bubble, but that's a report that I can bring back later when we're done.
Rich, what's the total expenditure of the master plan over the next
10 years
10 years?
is $282 million.
282. We have about 60 million,
67 million.
67 million in unrestricted funds that we'll be putting towards this. The balance is going to have to come from bonding or rate increases.
And impact fees.
Okay, and that'll be interesting to see. And then this plan addresses the high standards for phosphorus and nitrogen for Utah Lake.
It gives us the potential for those. So like I mentioned in the video, we tried to not throw away the whole car and start all over, because then the price tag would be in the much higher. And so we're using, because there's still some life on there, we're only decommissioning, as you saw in the video, the oldest part in about 2040 timeframe. So we're utilizing what we can, bolting on the things that are going to help us to meet the lower requirements if they come, and if or when they come. We have that ability, but it's kind of a phase program that we can do. We've looked at all the options and trying to make it so that we can turn this level or this far or this one further. We've thought of those things, but it's a significant price tag to add these primary clarifiers and anaerobic digestion. So I don't know how else to say it. It's going to be a big bite to take. So
We did an analysis of probably 2019, looking at the existing plant configuration and just scaling it up. So keeping the same process and scaling it up. And then we did a study looking at the plant with the new configuration with primary clarifiers and anaerobic digesters. And over the life of the facility, it saved us $300 million. It was a significant
It
savings.
was. The initial one was 120, and then projections, I think, took it up to, from financial, how they look at it, and it ends up being more. But the initial cost was a straight up like $120 million savings if we change the treatment process to include those primary clarifiers and anaerobic digestion system that we're adding on.
Are there any other questions? Craig?
I kind of got two hats here because I represent the landfill also in Richards, North Point. And Richard's been out and visited with Roger and Neil in the past. North Point is talking about significantly increasing their green waste program, mostly because of your green waste coming.
You're welcome, or no, you don't want it.
Well, they need to make some decisions on some capital improvements on green waste, and also at Bayview, the amount of sludge that you send out there. I would encourage you to talk to the general manager, Neil Schwindeman, so that we're in concert, that so they don't build some capital facility for green waste and composting and that sort of thing. And then you start the process again.
Yeah, I'll give Neil a call because there's more than one thing I need to talk to him
Okay,
about, so.
I would just encourage you to do that so that we're hand in glove, working together and going in the same direction.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you, Rich.
Any further questions? Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your work.
Welcome.
Okay, Shane, fire station feasibility study?
Yeah, so we discussed a couple weeks ago the fire station. We've been communicating back and forth with our architect on this. So we're actually trying to get a meeting for next week to sit down and go over some of these things in person, and they would have have Cirque there. That's what we're trying to set up, who provided the cost estimate. So we'll bring more detail back on that. They sent a better drawing, but it still didn't have dimensions, so I roughly scaled it based off the existing fire station dimensions. So hopefully that will help you there. And I think we'll just kind of leave it at that for now until the next meeting, because we'll be meeting between now and then and should have more information. So unless you have questions or things that you want us to ask the architect when we meet with them.
Just the one thing that I was thinking of when I saw the basement addition thing is that elevator question.
Okay, I can address that right now. I talked through email with him about that. If the gym goes in the basement, it will need an elevator. He said plain and simple on that. If it's simply utilities, you know, those type of things down there in storage, you could probably justify through sections of the code not having an elevator there. So that one seemed pretty straightforward.
Based on use then?
Yes, exactly. As far as making the community room larger, there's 2 offices over there. If those were taken out, that, you know, could be made larger. We talked about having a warming kitchen in there. If the kitchen is in the same location as the current kitchen, it will save some money. And so to save that money, yeah, on the old side. Yeah, to save that money, that would need to stay in about that same location. Oh, I did include just some bond estimates for bonding in there as well for you to look at. Based on our current sales tax, if we wanted to do a sales tax bond, they said we'd have no problem with that. They did tell us the rates have been going up, and just to keep that in mind, we could close a bond in 60 days, and then you have like 2 or 3 years or something like that to spend the money. So once we decide what we are doing, we probably should get serious if that's how we're going to fund it, while rates are very favorable.
Yeah, I think we should move very quickly on that, given the rates and the movement. But we think we could probably reduce this, you know, $4 million estimate. And if so, then that just reduces our P&I, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if I mentioned this last time, but one of the line items was plumbing. It was like 300 or 330,000. And I'm not a plumber, but I have a hard time seeing that much money in plumbing in that size of building. So those are some of the questions that I want to be able to ask Cirque. So, yeah. Do you have anything to add, Chief?
No, I think we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
Okay. Craig, Item C.
Here we go. I think everybody except Councilmember Law has been to open a public meeting training. True, not true?
Everybody except me?
No, law, no,
Oh,
not law, law.
I'll turn my hearing aids up.
Okay, very good.
Actually, you're speaking very loud.
Okay. I can do both. So we have two versions here. And so Utah Open Public Meeting Training needs to occur annually for any public body. And it's part of the audit checklist. And if we don't do it, our auditors gig us and we get on the bad list from Frugal Dougal, the Utah state auditor. We get on the hit list for him, and he's proud of that list and he publicizes it widely. So here we go. Okay, open and public meeting laws are also called sunshine laws, and that's where they started. And so we'll go to the next slide. Okay, we can do training simply, in a simple fashion. The theory is you do the people's business in an open and transparent manner. It's that simple. Now, I think Councilmember Thielen has a motion.
Now I feel bad after you brought up Dougal. I don't have to think bad.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, we'll keep going. So I've got some historical pictures here where training came from. So we've talked about what are sunshine laws. It's doing the people's business in the public. The next slide that we go to, in 1976, the federal government actually passed their first open and public meeting law. And it says, in essence, every portion of every meeting of an agency must be open to public observation, i.e. be in the sun, or January and February, be in the haze or the smog. So we need to implement procedures to ensure that the public is provided with adequate advance notice of the agency's scheduled meetings and agenda. And that's the law from 1976 in the federal government. Go to the next one. This is, here's the legislative intent that comes from Federalist Papers about 300 years ago now. The people are the only legitimate foundation of power, and it is from them the constitutional charters derive. Government is and should be the servant of the people and should be fully accountable to them for the action which it supposedly takes on their behalf. So in 1976, the law was signed. Here's a picture. I think the next slide shows a picture of President Ford and members of Congress at the signing ceremony of the Sunshine Act. A few years later, the state of Utah adopted the same concept. It's a little different, and tonight I want to do it in a teaching fashion for participation for quizzes. So everybody sign up for quiz. I think there's 5 questions, and if you'll just pick one, we can go through it and I'll read them. So I'm going to be asking you for your thoughts and answers. Okay. 3 members of a 5-person board inadvertently meet at a local restaurant during the ULCT convention. A good example would have been last week when they had the legislative day at the Utah State Legislature, where we could have had a quorum there sitting at lunch with members of the youth council if they went. They sit down together and discuss the upcoming council members and council meetings. Several serious discussions occurred between all 3 members regarding the land transaction to be made in the next meeting. We have any concerns about that? What are they? Lon?
Yes, we have concerns because there's 3 of us talking about it, and that's a majority.
A quorum?
Quorum, and we shouldn't be doing it, even if it's inadvertently in another setting.
Yeah, I had a personal experience about 10 years ago. My wife and I liked to go camping. We were up on the Skyline Road, and went down into the valley to go to a religious meeting. I went to get a drink of water, and 3 members of a certain city council were standing by the drinking fountain in between church meetings discussing a zone change. And they decided at that drinking fountain what the change was going to be before the meeting. I thought, should I jump in and tell them they're violating the law, or just keep your mouth shut and go to whatever meeting it was? I was disappointed and somewhat embarrassed that they would do that, because it's not right. So it requires self-control. It requires, when we go to chance social meetings like lunch at the Utah League in Cities and Towns Convention, like the mid-year convention here in a couple months in St. George, we can't do that. So we have to self-discipline ourselves. Any question about that? The key takeaway is a quorum, serious discussion, and decisions made. Violated the Sunshine Act probably in 3 different ways. Okay.
So what I hear from that, I mean, I thought it was a very funny one, because serious discussions regarding land transactions, the upcoming meeting, I mean, it's so pointed, obviously wrong, but there's a lot more gray areas out there, right? When you're just, there's 3 of us talking, but we're not talking about a land transaction or something at the next city council meeting, but we're talking something that's not on the agenda per se, but could be something that's an issue with the city, not on an agenda item at all. The question there is, that's where it becomes a little bit more not as obvious as question number 1 right here. And the rule of thumb always is, when there's 3 of us together, you just don't talk city things.
Right.
Is that what it's saying? I mean, even though this is so
Yes, it is. Our pre-council meeting meal tonight is a good example of a pothole to step into if we did that. So we have to monitor ourselves. And I didn't hear anything tonight in that regard. If we got there, I can tell you that I'm not afraid to say time out. We need to do it in a proper form.
Well, I remember about 8 years ago, Charmaine Warnock was the recorder, and we left the meeting, the city council meeting, walking out to our cars, talking about things, and Charmaine says, "Hey, you're done with the meeting, go home."
Good advice. We love to linger longer, we all say, let's get done, but then we linger longer together. So,
But the specifics on this is, for some reason, it says 3 is the magic number. 2 is not problematic, but 3
No,
is the magic number.
I intentionally changed, I've used this at various locations. I intentionally changed it for us because we have 5.
And 3 is the magic number of city council members. How does a mayor fit into that number?
She's not a voting member. She can't make a decision.
It's all about the quorum, right?
Yeah, that's all about the quorum. The mayor is important, but she doesn't count. Sorry.
Story of my life.
So let's go to question number 2. The city's purchasing agent received responses to the city's RFP for a $1 million cemetery project. You can tell that I've moved this around to real things. It is within the engineer's estimate and the budget approved by the council. The mayor reaches out to the entire council on the phone seeking approval to sign the agreement. Should the mayor sign the agreement? Shane?
No.
Why? Money's there,
It's outside of our purchasing policy.
but they already approved the money. Come on, work us with here.
That has came up as a question, like the council approves a new truck in the budget. So the estimate's 35,000 or whatever, probably 50,000 now, to be real. It's been approved there. Can that department just go get that truck?
Yeah,
when the budget
that's-
year comes?
That's the question.
That one's been a question for me, and to me, it's a gray area. My policy's always been to bring it here. Just to make sure. So on a smaller purchase, maybe not, but
Well, we got a cemetery project coming up. I mean, come on.
$1 million, it's coming here in my book.
That's the right answer. Yes. Even if my opinion and direction of council would be, even if it's been totally approved, anything over about $5 ought to come to the council for final acknowledgement, final approval, or whatever you want to call it, so that the minutes reflect that you have serious opportunity to make final decision. So, and it may not be convenient. Government is not efficient at times. So, okay, number 3.
And just so
Austin.
the council knows, our procurement policies, anything under 15,000, the city administrator has the ability to approve. And then there's a couple of levels above that on how it's handled, so.
Question number 3, Councilmember Thielen cannot attend the next meeting in person. He will be in some exotic place.
With Kalani Sitaki.
Can he attend the meeting in an alternate manner? The answer is absolutely yes. Now, I think the most important comment or question is, should attending virtually be the new norm with or without a pandemic?
I don't think so personally.
Why?
You know, I think there's an element, for me, I like the council being here, but I also understand, you know, I feel like that's the only great thing that's come from this stupid pandemic, sorry, through this pandemic, is that we have the technology and the ability to be able to do that, because, you know, there's gonna be situations that, you know, that are gonna come up, whether it's in a place or whatever it may be, but it allows them to participate and be able to continue with city business if we can't get a quorum. But personally, I like in person. I feel like there's the synergy, you can see people's reactions. But as far as, you know, is there a legal reason? I don't know, but that's just my personal preference.
How do the other members of the council feel? It's convenient at home. Easy.
I would only say that things are changing, meaning I used to feel this way about work, but that's the new norm nowadays with people. One of the first questions they'll ask when they're applying for a job is, can I work from home? You know, what's that policy on that? So even though the norm is, I'd prefer, like Carla said, to be in these meetings, it will be interesting moving forward if it does change up, because it's changing up for work.
It certainly is. I haven't been to the office in a month. So, okay, question number 4. A well pump is burned up. It's July 4th and 100 degrees. The council wants to hold a meeting right now. Can you do it?
Don't we have to do, don't we have to
If
post
that's
it?
public notice,
Public
right?
We
policy?
can.
There's an emergency.
We can. What kind of notice is to be given?
24 hours.
Not in an emergency. If it's a bona fide emergency, it can be right now, and the best notice, or the notice that is required to be given is the best notice available. A phone call, et cetera, et cetera. And if you show up and or participate in the meeting, you waive any objection to holding that meeting. But it's got to be a bona fide reason. A well pump burning up on July 4th and 100 degrees is legit.
The only one I can remember like this, there might have been 2, maybe the flood, but the fire after the big, our quail fire, we had an emergency meeting to talk about trying to get some funding to help with and post-fire issues.
So you can do it, but only if it's a real emergency. A lack of prior planning does not constitute an emergency. Shoot, okay, I think the last question, number 5. Electronic devices are wonderful tools. During a meeting, the following occurred. A citizen in the audience doesn't want to speak publicly about an issue because his neighbors are in the audience. However, he sent a text message to the council member A with his or her concerns. Is this an issue? Shane says yes. Why?
This is called the open public meetings training.
Yes,
It's not really done in the open if it's that way.
it really isn't. And I've seen it occur a number of times in various venues, especially when the issue is very contentious and there's feelings on both sides or all sides of the issue. And one neighbor feels differently than another neighbor, but they don't want to burn bridges, so they just send a text to Greg. What are you going to do about it? You going to respond back to the text?
I would not respond back. And ideally, I guess we don't see it. Now, you might, right? But no, I don't think you respond in the session unless it's orally in the mic.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think this is poor language, but I think it's kind of chicken to do it that way. You know, if you got a legitimate issue, stand up in public comment and let's go for it. Or whenever you give them access. Okay, here's one that's a little more personal. Councilmember X sends an email to Councilmember Z expressing extreme disappointment in the position X is taking presently.
Why? Is it Y has taken?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's what you meant, right? Not X, like I'm, like, it's like me.
Jessica.
sending an email to- Jessica, I'm so disappointed in what I did.
Yeah,
That's what you got. So you're talking about,
yeah, Jessica complaining about what Jason just said.
oh, that's every day.
Sorry.
In an email.
Don't- You doofus or what? We need to be very careful about those type of communications that are not, we're in a public meeting, a public setting, supposed to be doing business in the public. And if we have something to say, we got to express it orally and not behind the scenes. And that is not in the statute. That is a pet peeve of mine, to be very honest with you. So, okay.
And the whole issue there is you're in a meeting while this is happening. Outside of a meeting, all that would be okay. And it's not a wimpy thing to do for a resident to say, I don't want to stand up in front of the meeting because there's 7 really contentious people there who are yelling at people. But I don't agree with them. So, we have to be concerned that we have to listen to those who are not as contentious. So I don't think it's a wimpy thing myself. To your point, it shouldn't happen within a meeting during the meeting.
Yeah, I'm talking in a meeting.
But as council people, we need to listen to everyone, not just the people who are the loudest.
Yeah, well said.
So we do need technology for that.
Okay. Okay, Austin, let's go to the summary. What constitutes a meeting? Generally speaking, we have to give at least 24 hours notice, written notice of the meeting to be held. Bonnie has responsibilities to put it on the public notice website, at least 24 hours in advance. I had a client, is the landfill, and they were to adopt their budget a couple of years ago. And the budget public hearing was noticed on the whole bit, and they only published the notice about 18 hours in front of the meeting. I made them cancel the meeting, and they had to renotice it to readopt the following year's budget. And it was not convenient for the board members. It was embarrassing for the board secretary. And it's 24 is 24. And Bonnie does a good job. Usually we get it out at least on Thursday or Friday. We did have an amendment yesterday that was 24 hours in advance, and I appreciated that. Okay, next one. Electronic meetings, we've discussed it. Electronic meetings are certainly legal. But my personal feelings is we ought to attend if at all possible. There are times when we can't, certainly. Next one. Cautions, we've talked about the cautions. Please don't make decisions at drinking fountains or at the local. We don't have pubs, but local pubs. Next one. Notice, we've talked about it, 24 hours unless it's an emergency, and then it's the best notice possible. And if you show up to an emergency meeting, you waive any right to object to holding of that meeting. And a meeting is three or more of the council members. 2 plus the mayor is not a meeting, it's not a quorum. So I think there's two more. Closed meetings. We can hold closed meetings. There's 5 purposes. One is to discuss pending or imminent litigation, land acquisition or disposition, personnel matters, the deployment of security devices, and I've gone brain dead of the 5th one. There is a 5th one. Minutes required. Bonnie spends an extremely large amount of time to prepare minutes. Minutes are not a transcript of the meeting, but a synopsis of what takes place. She must record votes and final actions taken in the meeting, indicating who voted on what matter and what direction. Minutes are required for closed meetings, but if we're talking about the professional competency of an individual, the mayor could sign an affidavit saying that nothing was discussed except the personnel matters or the competency of an individual. No minutes are taken of that or a recording. If we do have a closed meeting, we need to remember that what is discussed in the closed meeting is confidential. Violation of that confidentiality requirement can be a criminal action, Class B misdemeanor. So that's it. And if matters are taken, actions are taken without compliance with the Open Meetings Act, they're not void, they're voidable. Somebody can contest them. There's a time limit, 30 days, I believe, is the statute of limitations, a period by which somebody can complain about the non-compliance with the Open and Public Meetings Law, and any actions taken can be voided, so they are voidable, not instantaneously voided. Any questions? Go, yes, Shane.
We don't do trainings too often, so maybe could you just touch for just a second on grandma and what's like?
I love family history, Shane, if that's what you're talking about. Grandma is a pain in the neck for Bonnie and I. We're dealing with an issue right now that we don't have an answer for because of the scope of grandma. Grandma is the Public Records Act, where individuals can send a simple form in and ask for any information from the city that is available. And there are some real difficulties in the administration of the law. The State Records Committee oversees the application of the law by the various public entities, cities, and our city. The most recent request we got, they asked for every communication regarding a particular subject back to, help me out, Bonnie. No, it went further than that.
Well, they wanted.
2005, I think it was. So they wanted us to go back 16 years. I sent the attorney for this particular request saying, that's ridiculous. Number one, you're asking for text for mayors and council members that are not even in office. I think you said we were on our 4th mayor in that period of time. It was ridiculous. And I said, make it reasonable. So he changed it to 2018, I think, which was a little more reasonable in this regard. Plaintiffs' attorneys are no longer using discovery in litigation for getting access to government records. They send a grandma request. It's faster. We usually have 10 business days to respond to it. And it, frankly, is more complete. And we get the raw data. We have to give them the raw documents. There's no explanation. We just, here they are. And so I was at the North Point landfill meeting yesterday. Mayor Miller of Saratoga Springs had a new iPhone in a box. And I said, Jim, what do you got that for? He said, because we're mixing on personal phones and iPads, city business and personal business. And we have no way in Saratoga Springs to bifurcate it, to separate it. So they've gone to separate devices for city purposes and personal purposes and private business purposes. I think you have to make up your own mind what direction you go, but I can tell you that that is a very positive step for the protection of the elected officials and other officials in Saratoga Springs. So grandma, very easy to fill out the request, very difficult for us to administer, very time consuming. And we can be compensated for our time after we spend a certain amount of time and effort on it. But generally cities don't charge very much. We really don't charge what we ought to be charging. So besides the minutes, people can give us all your building permits for the last 5 years. We have 10 days to do it. Well, yeah, if they say, we're the press, we get it for free, and I'm writing an article for the paper next week, give it to me now. And so grandma is a very powerful tool, and I think it really goes hand in hand with the open and public meetings law, where we do business in the sunshine. And it's a burden upon the city recorders. There's a gentleman in Cedar Hills that we get a grandma request about every 2 weeks from the individual. And Colleen and Gretchen spend half their time answering grandma requests. And the State Records Committee is very pro disclosure.
And Craig, and you know, you never know what's going to come out, but there is, you know, there's a number of bills in the legislature addressing some of this. So there's one against vexatious grammar requests, you know, so it'd be interesting to see if that goes through, and that may have some.
I have no
Faith.
faith that the legislature is going to reduce that. Yeah. Yeah. So Shane, I don't know if I answered
Yeah,
your
that's-
question, but
That's great.
it's all encompassing and very powerful tool. I used it a couple of weeks ago because the city attorney would not give us the information that he had. I said, okay, well, I had Hiram do a grandma request and it's due tomorrow. I mean, it's been a month and he said he'd give it to us.
Do y'all have a city email address? We just encourage you to use that for city business. It's a good way to keep your personal and city stuff separate.
Yeah, be careful with the crossover.
Would it be good for us to create policy that, to that point, that city council members, planning commission members must use their email address exclusively and not use text as a form of communication? That way it might make it easier.
The planning commission, they don't have city emails, but maybe we could create them.
Yeah, maybe that's what we need.
We could do it. There's a small cost per month. Texting, it's such a big part of communication these days. I don't know. The way we operate, I have a hard time envisioning not being able to use a text. I don't know for a council member, but for us, you know,
Maybe like a group text for everyone, but maybe I'm misunderstanding. If I text the mayor or something, could a grandma request require me to send that to him?
Regarding a city issue, the answer is yes.
So that's why I'm saying it's one thing if you do it as to the group, and that's great. And back in the group, that's there, but off that group one, everything I think should be alpinecity.org email address if possible. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of a way to make it easy for those grandma requests.
One tough thing though is timely. Some of us don't read our emails very frequent during certain parts of the season. And I try to hit my city ones so that I'm right on top of it. But a text, if there's something of urgent information, text has been best for me. But yeah, I hear you. I try to keep everything as clean. I've been doing it 8 years, and I do use my city email.
I've got a little different situation because I can always pull the attorney-client card. But if it's on a very difficult issue that Shane and I are dealing with, I'll send Shane a text that says, call me as soon as possible. And so we do it orally. We did it, what, 2-3 times last week?
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, that's just that's my practice. So it's a very difficult area of the law that we have to comply with.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
We've got, can we move, put item D on hold
Yep.
and we have Susan, so if we can move to the next action item. And that is the approval of Susan Whitburgh to Planning Commission. Susan, did you want to come up and? So I know a couple of you or several of you have been able to speak with her. I know a couple others were trying to get hold of you and weren't able
Yes,
to,
they
but did anybody have any questions for Susan? Did you want to introduce yourself briefly?
You bet. So I have lived here since 1984. That seems like a long time ago. I was trying to remember who the mayor was. I thought maybe Ron Rasmussen, but it might have even been, I can't remember if Mayor Barnes was, I can't remember. It's been a long time. Let's just say that, probably 1,000 people here. So I love this city. I'm probably up on the East Mountain into Lambert Park every day. I've been doing that our whole time we've lived here. I have a real passion. I feel like we need to make sure we're carrying forward all the good things that make Alpine Alpine. Trying to think, I've been involved in the community in a lot of different ways. I remember when Judge Arnold was here, I remember getting some kind of a traffic ticket that down in American Park, I didn't agree with. I'm like, I'm gonna take that to him. Just because I just walked in and, hey, can I just talk to you about this ticket? And he said, yeah. So he looked it over and he said, I kind of think that I think you're okay. I think we're gonna waive the penalty, but you're gonna have to do the pet show at Alpine. So we've come a long way, haven't we? But anyway, what questions do you maybe have for me?
I'll start. You say you've been involved in the community a little. Explain more than just the pet show, what
Yeah,
has
it's
you
a
been
lot
involved
with Alpine
I
Days.
will-
I was trying to think back. When I say community, probably a lot of things in the school. I did a lot of things that I felt like were very helpful for, my children and our little community here on that level. I feel like I'm at an age now where I could do more without some of those restrictions of being a mom with a lot of kids at home. And I've come to a lot of your meetings. I also have a little bit of involvement being a small business owner here in Alpine. My husband and we've been here since 1998. And as soon as that's kind of when we started opening up for commercial, right? When we're kind of at the roundabout there, we bought one of those units. And then I'm right in the thick of building a home, and I've been back and forth with some of that's really, that's just become something that's very, I've had to really pay attention to what goes on with that. A lot of times we don't even think about those things. And I think that's been very good for me, and very helpful for me to see some of the processes that go on, so.
Okay, so as far as time, you mentioned you have a little more time now.
Yeah,
Every 2 weeks, you're able to do the study that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Look into the ordinances and make sure that you understand them.
I did get on the website and read some of those requirements and the different, distinctions between the council and then the commission. And I thought, I of course, am gonna be needing to learn a lot, that's for sure. But I'm trying to, if I can find information that brings me up to speed with those kinds of things, I would love to do that. I would love to get in and read and figure out a lot of the things that have to go into making those decisions.
And Susan, I did make a mistake. I thought the training for planning commission from the state ombudsman's office was on the 1st. It's on the 15th.
Okay,
So-
I'll get that noted. So, but yes, as far as the commitment on the Tuesday nights and doing the work before, I understand you get a packet, read through that thoroughly. We can go get questions answered. And that's something I think I'd really enjoy. And then I'll really try hard to make sure the Tuesdays are a big priority.
Any other questions? I think. The rest of you guys have spoken. Do you guys have any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Come on, Jason, don't you have a question?
I'm excited for you.
You want to run resolution?
I'm looking for the resolution here.
I think they're looking for the resolution number,
I have
because it was last minute.
Here
Here
we
we go,
go.
you guys.
So, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution R 2022-09, appointing Susan Whitburgh to the Alpine City Planning Commission with the term beginning January 25th, 2022, and term concluding December 31, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Greg Gordon and a second by Jason Thielen. All in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate it.
Look forward to working with you, and thanks for everybody's service. I mean, really, it's amazing that you.
And thank you. I know that Carl has
Thank you.
asked a lot of people to do it, and she's
Yeah.
talked to a lot of
Yeah.
people. and- No, you're not. That didn't come out quite right. But thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica, I'm gonna email you about, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, so Shane, for item D on reports and presentations for the budget.
Do you have that backup, Austin?
Yeah.
Just outlined a budget calendar. There's some flexibility in here and it could change. But this will give us kind of a little bit of a guide as we go through the budget process. So take a look at that. The items in blue are Alpine City dates and kind of milestones. Those in green are Lone Peak Public Safety District. So they have to kind of line up so that their budget is approved ahead of ours, so that we can put it in our tentative and final budget. So, and there's only 2 green ones on there. There will be more. That's what we have right now.
Okay. Any questions for Shane?
Is green telling us we need to be doing something? Or green?
No,
for the Lone
that's
Peak.
That's the
Public Safety
date
District.
that's planned. So for example, the first green item there, that's the date that's planned for a work session and then adopting the tentative budget for Lone Peak.
Okay.
The second one is the public hearing and adoption of the final budget for Lone Peak. And then the amendments for the current budget year. So.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll move on to item 5, which is action and discussion items. For item A, resolution 2022-08.
Greg, do you wanna, I guess you already explained this the other day, but maybe just refresh.
Well, very briefly, we talked about some practical situations where people, city councils and government in general. And I listened to Boyd Matheson today, he was talking about the US Senate, where they have a devotional every time they meet. US Senate every day, Utah State Legislature every day. They have some type of devotional. In the mid-'80s, there was a lot of litigation against cities. Murray, I talked about my personal experience, where the court decided that there needed to be broader expansion of the thought of devotionals. It shouldn't be of one dominant thought or one dominant religion or whatever. And the proposed policy that you're looking at gives us the opportunity to broaden our horizon on devotionals. When appropriate, it gives Bonnie some direction. Does unfortunately create some responsibilities. to make sure that as individuals express an interest, or the city council and the mayor has an interest to have a different type of devotional, gives direction and boundaries for that type of thought. So it's a proactive step to hopefully keep us out of the proverbial social media arena for doing something somebody perceives as improper.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do, Mayor. Can I ask? Okay, Craig, I do have several things that I'd like to have you clear up for me on the purpose. It states very clearly the purpose of this, that Alpine City invites churches, civic groups, and individuals to present thought, reading, or invocation at its opening ceremony for the city council meetings as per this resolution.
Yes.
End of purpose. As we move into one, though, it says it is the policy of the city council to allow for a wide variety of community organizations, churches, and individuals to offer thoughts, readings, and invocations at city council and other public meetings to achieve the above stated purpose, which the above stated purpose only was city council meeting.
Right.
What is the other public meetings? Is that planning commission?
What is the
that-
policy of planning commission for an opening?
Same.
It's the same.
Historically done the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my question is, what is this other public meetings? Is it Trails Committee? Is it?
Well,
So as far as I'm good with it being the city council, if it's meaning the purpose, maybe we need to have up there city council and other public meetings as well. I don't know. Or strike other public meetings in line 1 and just have a city council.
Lon, you've caught me off guard. I hadn't thought about other organizations like the Trail Committee. Planning and zoning, I can see that if they're doing the same practice as the city council,
So
it's applicable.
So I read this different. I read it that it's the city council's policy that at public meetings,
okay.
of which
Okay.
the planning commission is one.
Okay, and if that's the way it's read, then okay, I'm good with that. I'm not. It just mentioned the stated purpose, and stated purpose was city council. So then if we move down into line 4, the first bullet item, the city recorder shall allow to be scheduled presentation of thoughts, readings, and invocation for the opening ceremony of the meetings of the city council meetings. What does that mean? Is it redundant?
Bonnie's got the responsibility for the city council. I have never seen anybody else want to go to planning and zoning commission and give an inspirational thought.
Right, but
Well, no, I think he's more worried about the wording,
the
because it's the
wording.
opening ceremony of the meetings of the city council meetings. I think it's.
We can take out, we can take out that
Opening
first
of
meeting.
the city council.
either the first meetings or the second meeting, it sounded like we're
Yeah, that's cumbersome.
And then can we also put a time limit on it? Because
Yeah, it is. It's down at the bottom.
It is down.
That's right,
It
okay.
is.
I thought I saw that. but I'm
Yeah,
like, Where
it is
is
down at
it?
the bottom. The other question on bullet number 3 there, let's see, via resources available to the city. Does that mean the newspaper, the internet, doesn't matter what we do it in?
Yeah, well,
as
let's
long
not,
as we
let's
do
not
it
spend money.
in one place.
Yeah,
Okay,
put it on the website saying,
Okay.
opportunity to give devotionals for the next 6 months is available. Contact Bonnie.
yeah, just whatever the resource is, we don't have to do it like a open public meetings
Nope.
act, just somewhere.
Yep.
Okay. And I do like the fact that it's every 6 months, only once every 6 months, right? That has to be put in there. As well, though, on the second to last bullet item, individuals that do not receive an invitation are also welcome to present by giving the city recorder a written request to do so. Is the next bullet item good enough to say that it's scheduled by the city recorder, or would they feel like they could come in and request this even though they haven't gotten an invitation and say, I want to do it tonight?
No,
It's clear enough that we can just say,
happy to see you in 2
we'll
weeks.
schedule you when the next time is available.
Yeah, there's an individual that has already requested to be on the Cedar Hills Council meeting for June or July.
Okay. I just wanted to not have someone come in and say, okay, I wasn't invited, but I do want to do it and I want to do it tonight.
Great, see you at public comment.
Okay. Right. That's all the questions I have, Mayor.
Okay. Anybody else?
My big one was the last, the two of them, but the fourth bullet item down, the exact same one that you said. I'm confused by that as well. I don't know if we can clean that up.
We can try.
And if an individual needs to receive an invitation, the invitation is received by the individual. How?
Bonnie's reached out to the individual.
Okay, so they've asked for it and then the invitation is given by Bonnie. But if someone else hasn't asked for it, they still go to Bonnie.
Yeah, they come to Bonnie and say, hey, we don't have you never reached out to me. For
Because
example.
Bonnie's never going to reach out to anyone unless
Right,
the
but
person
so they're
reaches out to
saying,
them.
in order to do that though, then they've got to do a written request to Bonnie. That is just explaining the procedure.
Yeah,
So they're saying that you're either one, you're asked by Bonnie to do it, or number two, you have to request from Bonnie to do it in written form, and then Bonnie will work it out between the two.
So as I read this, I'll be honest with you, I don't like it at all.
the whole policy.
The whole policy. I prefer not to do Exhibit A. And if someone comes to us like they have in Cedar Hills, we'll deal with it at that point. I don't like the idea that we're going to ask our city recorder to list this in newspapers or wherever to invite people to come in. We're creating a problem, not a problem, but we're creating a situation that we maybe don't want to have. I'd rather not have devotionals or prayers or invocations or thought readings by people in this meeting, if that's kind of what this is opening it up for. I'd rather have us just get here and do our business.
So what Craig said, what we could do is instead of doing this, we could just eliminate the prayer.
Yep.
Of our call to a meeting order. So if that's the preference, we could do that and not have to do this and not burden our city recorder. That's also an option, correct, Craig?
Absolutely.
So if you want to make a motion to do that, we can definitely vote on it,
Or
but
we can make them, or we could do nothing right now. And if we have an issue in the future, we can let the person come in and then we can decide to not do it at that point or change it to this, but.
I don't think
just
we
feel
can
like-
decide to not do it once they make the request. We have to have
Yeah, and that's fine.
structure in place at that time to
so it's just a
accept or
preventative measure.
deny.
In my mind, you either set this up so that we have a process in place that they have a means to do it, or we take out our opening prayer and then we just say, sorry, we're not doing any of it and we're not saying the prayer. My understanding is those are our two options, correct?
No, the third option is not to worry about it right now.
And then what? So
And
what if
then
we
if someone
have, and
comes
then
in and
somebody
does it,
comes in,
we
does
say,
a
okay,
30-minute
schedule it,
presentation?
and we'll make a decision after that if we want to go this route or do away with it. We've been doing this for how long and never had an issue with it. I just am not a fan of creating the first part of every one of our meetings for people to come in and give thoughts or special readings or, I mean, that's not what. I'm
Okay,
here
so where do we
for-
have to publish this? So my understanding according to this is that, every 6 months we are posting it. Where are we posting it?
You can do it on the website.
It's like, we don't have to go that, we don't have to go to all our normal public notice.
No.
It's just one place that it's being, and this person needs to hunt it down, whoever they are. Yeah.
Good.
I don't know if I like the news.
But I think if you put in the newsline.
Somewhere people do even less than the newsline.
So quick question on 3, it says, intended to be non-denominational, non-proselytizing, however, then it says we don't dictate the form, so it could be denominational and proselytizing.
It's not, it could be denominational, but they shouldn't proselytize.
So Jason, what I heard you say is you don't want to have the prayer either. So why don't you just make a motion saying that we eliminate the prayer from our meetings and then we don't have to do this?
Well, I just think,
Or
again, this is in front of us because our city attorney says, hey, I've heard this in other cities and we've had this issue in Cedar Hills. I just don't think it's needed right now.
Greg, what do you think? So do you want to make a motion to deny this ordinance, to reject it?
Let me add something. I mean, I don't think Craig would come to us and say, hey, maybe we should look at getting ahead of this just because he wants to go past 8 o'clock tonight. So I
didn't put that in the policy, but
I mean, I think he brought this to us. We're always saying, why are we reactive? Why aren't we proactive? Why aren't we getting ahead of things that we know are gonna come to us? And so I would just say, I
So
think
do
there's
I
a
hear a
reason.
motion? Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah,
to
I'll make
pass
a
it?
motion to approve resolution R 2022-8, establishing policies and procedures for devotional participation.
Hello?
What did you say?
We
Must have
mute
made
that
it out.
person. Hey, Austin, who does it show speaking? Should come up.
It's gotta be Austin.
I think they stuck themselves on mute now.
There we go.
Hope you're on mute. Okay, do we have a second for passing resolution R 22-08?
I'll second.
Okay,
And my question is there anything we can modify here to make this simpler or? you know,
Mayor, I have one question, and this may sound interesting because you could take things different ways, but is there anything, Craig, we can put in here that ensures that the person doesn't show up and it's not derogatory or disparaging or demeaning to anybody or any group?
were you here when I gave the prayer at the start of this whole thing 20 years ago?
The start of this whole thing 20 years ago? No, I wasn't here.
Our mother in heaven, if indeed there's a mother in heaven,
Oh, that one.
I
you told me about.
encourage you to strike down these dumb and stupid elected
Yeah.
officials.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
I
like-
cut them off. And that's when the city, Murray City got sued, and I got sued personally.
Right.
They submitted the prayer, i.e. what they thought was the prayer, and I told them, come to public comments. Just give it up public comments. But they were after prayer in city and government meetings. That was their intent.
Right.
So I don't know. If somebody started to do something that was totally inappropriate, I don't know how to stop them from a practical standpoint. The mayor can't shout them down. That doesn't help, We turn the mic off, I guess. We can ask, yeah, he can take care of it over there.
Lon, did you have a question?
Yeah, to Jason's point though, if we didn't pass anything right now and someone did come in and want to offer a prayer or a devotional or whatever, like we have had one request before, and we allow them to do it, they can't sue us. There's no legal trouble we can get in by not doing this, right? The legal trouble we would get in is by not allowing someone to express their opinion or their thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
And you allow somebody else to do it that's more aligned with your personal feelings.
So my personal concern would be, you're talking about, giving Bonnie extra work. But I feel like this would streamline it because it narrows it down to one time every 6 months, where right now you're open to whenever.
But I think to Lon's point, if we didn't do this, if we didn't do this or we did do this, it's the exact same thing. Someone can still come in and say that prayer that you talked about, Craig, even after we pass this, and we're gonna let them do it. So the prayer content doesn't matter. And if you're talking about, if someone comes in later and says they want to do it, to your point, we let them do it.
So Craig, what's the advantage here? Is it that we can limit them to at most twice a year and to 2 minutes, for example, and with some guidelines.
Yeah, that's the sole intent. I was just trying to be proactive, to be honest with you, not to create some controversy, to be honest with you.
In that third bullet in 4, where we give a public notice every 6 months, is that required?
Not required, because there's no direct guidance, except the Supreme Court said you should, if you're going to do it, you should have some sort of a procedure or policy. And they were very non-specific on what procedure or policy that would be, as long as it's equal-handed.
And Jason, we can still do the same thing if this goes awry, we can still then disband it and say no more prayers.
Well, to what Greg said, I mean, ultimately, if you take out bullet item 3, it's kind of exactly what we're doing right now anyway. If someone were to come in and make a request. And if what Craig Hall is saying is that we don't have to have that in there, why are we putting that in there and making Bonnie do something?
I would amend in my motion and remove bullet point 3.
No, I like bullet point 3, that it's once every 6 months. It just narrows that window down. So if someone really wants to do it, they have twice a year that they can actually put in for it.
That's not what bullet
No,
point 3
it
says.
just has to be noticed every 6
That's
months.
just public notice.
It's just a step in our, if we could, all we have to do is have to have a procedure in place. The resolution is the procedure.
Oh, okay, so my understanding was she knows this every 6 months and then there's like a week,
No.
that period, and that's when they can do it.
And there's nothing in here, Craig, right, that limits an individual. They can just request every week if they want, or every week.
No, there's nothing.
So there's no limit here either, so someone could be, if no one else is requesting, someone could just keep requesting every meeting.
Yeah, can we say like they could do it once a week?
Yeah. If it's more troubling
And
to,
can we limit it to Alpine residents?
I wouldn't.
Really?
Yeah, that might be a problem.
Yeah, I wouldn't from a practical standpoint.
Okay, let's
If
move
you-
on from this. So are you amending your motion to remove bullet item
Mhm.
number 3?
Yes.
Legally, do you see any issues with that, Craig?
No,
Okay,
I had one quick question. So Craig, you did something similar to this in Cedar Hills. Did this address an issue by having this policy in place?
no, we were trying to be proactive and not look backwards and not attempt to solve an issue that was in front of us presently. It was to establish a policy because they had gotten 2 requests, ironically, within a week or 2 or 3 of each other. And we thought it was ironic, and they just wanted to be proactive.
So them and Cedar Hills, do they feel like this policy that they've put in place then has resolved some of their concerns as to the future? Or what has it changed in there?
Well, they didn't have anything, it was new. I can tell you that this policy is not of my total creation. I went and looked a month ago after the issue came up with those folks. This is not verbatim, but is the policy of Riverton, South Jordan, maybe Bluffdale and Salt Lake County. And
They
Murray.
still have prayers in their meetings.
Yeah,
okay, so right now we have an amendment to the motion, which is to take out bullet item number 3. Greg, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah, I agree to it. Although I wonder, do we need this until we have a problem? And we could react if that
Okay, so
comes up,
let's go
right?
ahead and vote on this.
I have
And
a
then we can
question.
discuss if you want to shoot it down, and then let's go back to the drawing board.
But the only thing is there's a couple of modifications that Locke put in there. Do we need to put that in our motion?
He has not
Striking-
formally, did you?
Well, I didn't, asked the questions about meetings and Craig said he
Right.
could scratch that last meetings.
So did you want to
Or
do
one of
that,
those meetings.
Jessica?
Where there's the two words, meetings.
Okay, that's just a grammatical, right? So,
No.
no, it's up higher.
It's bullet 1 under 4.
Yeah, bullet 1.
And then the second question is, do we want to take out and the other public meetings in number 1? We can or cannot, but
Okay, so right now, we've got a motion and amendment to the motion. Do we want to vote on that motion, or what are we doing? Procedurally, I need help here.
Robert says, Rules of Order says that the amended motion needs to be disposed of before you go back to the prime motion.
Okay, so,
But could the motion be amended further?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
so
It'd be just a second amendment.
if there is a proposed amendment to the amended motion, I would entertain that.
And that would be removing the
Other meetings.
language
and other public meetings.
under the bullet point 1 under 4. And
So number one, removing, okay, so what I'm understanding is under item number 1, the very last line, remove
Just
and other
other public
meetings.
meetings.
Say at city council to
City
achieve
council.
above stated purposes. And then
Bullet number 1 under
under
4.
number 4, the first bullet item, change the grammatical error on that. So removing the extraneous, the word meetings. What else?
That was all that I,
Is that it?
well, then the original motion.
Right.
So she says to okay, so right now what we have on the table is to pass ordinance 2022 or resolution 2022-08 with the following modifications that we discussed, correct? Did you have any other amendments other than that? So we wanted, okay, so it was taking out other meetings on item number 1, item number 4, bullet point 1, taking out the extra word meanings, and then taking out bullet number 3 under item 4. Is there anything else? Okay,
Yeah,
that is,
so I'll
okay,
agree
so
with
are
that.
you okay with that? We have a motion and a second amended motion. Can we vote? No, you got discussion.
I just wanted to make a comment. I do like the fact that on the last bullet, it does limit it to
2
less
minutes.
than 2 minutes.
I like that.
Simply, it is part of the deal. They
Yeah.
can't just ramble on,
It's pretty much the only thing that changes from our existing policy is that last.
is
bullet.
that.
Okay,
Right.
so can we vote? All in favor?
No, it's
Aye.
roll call
Aye.
vote,
Oh,
roll call
okay.
vote.
Jason Thielen, yes.
Craig Gordon, yes.
Kelly Law, yes.
Jessica Smuin, yes.
Long light, yes.
Okay, resolution R22-08 passes. Okay, Burgess Park Pavilion, Shane? Or is that Austin?
That's me. So we discussed this in our special city council meeting. We wanted to start working on this, and so there weren't any votes at the city council at that meeting, so I wanted to vote on record. If the council is willing to open this pavilion up by removing the restroom in the west end and then doing some improvements that I've listed here, such as soffit in the ceiling, prevent the birds from getting up in there, painting. And I took a little further look at it. I think we're gonna have to re-roof it. Some of the plywood sheeting is stained, like it's had leaking water. It's got an old shake shingle roof. So we'd propose probably a standing seam metal roof on it. And then installing new picnic tables.
I'd like to make a motion. Because then we can talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
I make a motion that, can I make a motion, Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. I make a motion that city staff prepare a cost estimate for the proposed improvements to the South Burgess Park Pavilion and bring it back to city council for approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion?
One question is, what would be the impact of keeping the shake shingles? Do you think? Or is that, I guess that's part of what you could estimate, but is that?
So this is something I'm gonna bring up in communication for this building. It has shake shingles. We're starting now to see some stains on some ceiling tiles. We had one issue right above Heidi's desk on a big rainstorm late last year. For this building, the estimate, this is pre-COVID, it was 140,000 for shake shingles. It was about 70 for asphalt. So this pavilion's obviously smaller. I think the standing seam metal roof, which is consistent with all our other pavilions in Creekside Park, and this actually has asphalt shingles across the street, I believe. The longevity of the metal roof is nice, but if the council wanted to go with the shake shingle roof, we could get a price to do that.
I think we should at least just look at that, since this one's so visible by being by the road there.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Lon?
Will we need to be doing some concrete work underneath that tear out then?
There'll be a little bit, like where the toilets come up.
Is that gonna be just a fill, or are we gonna have to cut it out, break it out?
We didn't go in there because everything's boarded up with plywood. So we'd have to take all that down and put it back up. But it appears that the slab was poured and then the cinder block walls were just
On top of it.
put right on top of the slab and went up to the bottom of the trusses. There is a little bit of electrical work that would have to be done. It's very old down there. Some of the conduits run along the bottom of the trusses, so to put soffit, it would be in the way. And it's kind of not very safe right now anyway. Plus, in this, is the annotation on, or can you put that on, Austin? So looking at the part of the pavilion that's facing us, you got the corner post and there's two more posts, and then there'd be a fourth post. Halfway up that is where the electrical panel is. It's actually on the wall that would be interior. And so the kids have actually ripped it open. It's all bent up and everything. We'd have to address that. What we were thinking is we'd probably need between two posts, probably that post and the corner one, kind of a little wall there, so we'd have a place to mount the electrical panel.
What is the electrical panel for?
So this, I didn't realize until I went back out there, but it does have lights. And I don't know why I didn't think about it. It'd be very dark in that restroom if it didn't have.
Right, but if we're tearing it out though, do we have lights in any of our other pavilions?
We do at Creekside. Yeah, and we do at the one at the north end of Burgess. If we wanted to eliminate it, we could.
I think just with that one, if we can eliminate walls where kids can hide behind it, write on it, do whatever, tear, there's holes on it, there's graffiti on it.
Yeah.
I thought the idea was to have it completely open so that kind of activity didn't happen. But I don't know.
To have lights, would we have to keep a wall?
I think we would, or
Panel.
figure out a different way of mounting a panel somewhere else. So.
Can you mount it up in the attic space once you put the fascia in?
I don't think so. I think it needs to be accessible.
See, and I don't like the idea of having a wall.
And
but-
the wall, and to Carla's point, as I was standing here looking at this, I look north up to the other pavilion. That pavilion, it doesn't have a restroom in it, but if you can just imagine a three-sided, just kind of three walls, the short wall and then the long wall on the west, and then the other.
With the
short wall.
doorway out the back, though, is the one.
Right, so an Eagle Scout fixed that pavilion up and made it really nice, and somebody beat a hole in the side of the siding already, and it's probably 6 or 7 years old.
That's why I think it should just be open.
So,
That can be determined though when you do the assessment and what the cost would be, right?
well, if we are going to address power and have power here, we would need to get a cost to update that power. So
Is
if we're
there a-
not going to do it, let's just save that effort.
Is there a power meter on there or where is it?
It
getting-
runs from a meter up.
Okay, so it's receiving its
interior.
I feel like
point
with
source, another
daylight
place.
savings starting at the beginning of April and going all the way to the end of October. I don't know. I mean, are you guys how, are you strong about that we need to have lighting in that pavilion?
No.
I don't feel like.
In
it
fact,
needs-
this pavilion is very close to this sign issue we spent a lengthy amount of time discussing last time. And so I would prefer no lights here so that we don't have people coming back and saying, you're keeping me up all night because people are in the pavilion all night.
That's where I mean, it's up to you guys, because I don't have a say.
One less something that can be messed with is better. I would like to see maybe shake, metal and asphalt. I
Okay,
mean, let's just look at the three roofing options.
all right.
Okay, do I have a motion?
You have.
There is a motion.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
that's
just need
right.
to vote.
Okay, and then, okay, so we've got discussion. Okay, we have a motion to approve, we have a second. What was it, you? Lawn lot?
Lon
No.
seconded, yeah.
I seconded. Jason made the motion.
Jason Thielen made the motion, Lon Lot, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, anything else you need from us, Shane?
Oh, so remove power and look at those 3 roofing options, right?
Okay,
That's it on that.
okay, I assume this is gonna be Austin, item C, height and grading requirements.
Yes, yeah, I'll take this item. Okay, so this item is coming, this in 2021, Mayor Stout asked that the Planning Commission look at this. In September of last year, in 2021, the City Council and Planning Commission held a field trip, and they went around the city looking at examples of height and grading issues. Following that field trip, the Planning Commission has held several discussions on this item. They looked at the way that height and grading is done in other cities. And most recently, they wanted to look at Bountiful City because it was a little more unique than some of the other cities. Some of the things that came out of this is, we discovered there's really kind of 2 ways of that hillside communities in Utah deal with height. So you have the strict natural grade approach, which is something that's done in Park City. They measure height from the natural grade. And then what we see in most other hillside communities around the state is they measure it from the average finish grade, which is what Alpine City is currently doing. So last meeting, the Planning Commission took a deep dive into the Bountiful City Code. So the Bountiful City Code had a specific thing in there that said that they allowed 10 feet of cut and or fill on a vertical height. And so they wanted to understand that better. So they looked at that specific ordinance, which is in your packet. It's towards the back of the packet, actually. And so I'll just read kind of what that says, but they wanted to investigate that further. So it says the top or bottom edges of slopes. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. The maximum vertical height of any cut or fill shall be 10 feet, except for existing naturally occurring and or man-made site anomalies. An anomaly shall mean any abnormal deviation from the natural contours of the property encompassing less than 10% of the entire parcel area or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. So they looked at that. The discussion went to, so what does that look like in practicality? If we had a lot, let's say in Willow Canyon subdivision on Preston Drive, and they're on the downhill side of the road, and we limit them to 10 feet of fill there. Some of those lots are actually way below the street. more than 10 feet. And so they're still having a driveway, a sloping driveway that goes down into their garage or to their home, and their home could still be well below the level of the street. And so the planning commission didn't like the idea. They wanted the owner to have the option to be able to kind of get their home up closer to the street level. And so they didn't feel like what Bountiful was doing would be a good fit for Alpine. Other things that they looked at Bountiful's code. They had a 2-to-1 slope. They don't allow anything beyond a 2-to-1 slope. We looked at that. It wouldn't really help the height issue. It might help with the vegetation and things like that. But we already have some ordinances in place that deal with reseeding and vegetation that already kind of take care of that. And then the other thing that we looked at in the in the Bountiful City ordinance was they had a slope of driveway. They allow up to a max slope of 15%. In contrast, Alpine City has a 12% rule. And so we looked at that. Ultimately, they made a recommendation. They looked at this and they thought, our driveway ordinance really does restrict what you can do on a lot, how much you can build it up in a lot and in many ways. And so they're recommending that we just keep our ordinance the way it is. After comparing it to all the other cities in the state, the other hillside communities, they felt like our ordinance works pretty well. And they don't feel like any changes are necessary to it. So that's the recommendation that's coming from Planning Commission. And it's now back here for City Council to look at.
Bountiful's ordinance was on national TV the other day. Is that Discovery Incredible Pools they were building in Bountiful, and they went all into their grading requirements and made a big point of it.
Interesting.
Austin, so just in going through like the process of the last election, and maybe because I know Mayor Stout, but I received quite a bit of feedback about certain buildings in the city, right? And so it seemed like people in the city wanted to address something with this. And is everyone familiar with the garage? I was told to go see the garage. Has everybody seen that?
There's the garage, and then I think there's a second building.
Yeah.
The barn.
Yeah, the barn.
Yeah.
So like those two items or those two buildings, those would still stand under this.
So they looked at the Bountiful ordinance, and
Yeah.
you could have built both of those buildings doing things the way Bountiful does it.
Okay.
We looked at a proposal, and one of the problems was when we measured it out, that garage would have still qualified, and that was kind of disappointing, right? That we were making the strict ordinances on garages and all this stuff, and that same structure still made it through. So
So that garage, if we're talking about the same garage, there was really no big cut and fills on it at all anyway.
I think there was a raise though, right?
But there was
a raise.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it significant.
Yeah, it's not even close to what these are, not even a 3-to-1 even. Not even a 3-to-1. We're talking, these are 2-to-1s. So.
Right.
So again, the perspective of a few of the ones that look that way wouldn't even change if we were to use no greater than 10-foot cut or fill type thing. They don't even come close to it still.
Yeah.
Well, the barn was an accessory
Yeah.
structure, so that could
Yeah, that was
possibly
a-
be addressed.
yeah, so-
in
so-
that, but.
You would address, I would think we would address these other height / setback / things versus the grading thing, because I can take you to so many lots around that really are only a 3 or 4 foot fill. But they look like they're really sticking up there. I've looked at a few houses just recently and it's like, there's nothing, even though their lot slopes off maybe 6 feet to the back or 8 feet to the back, and they're sitting on the front, they can't put their front porch down in the hole, you know? And they're still no higher than the 34-foot limit that there is on the building limit. Again, the biggest problem is people are using setback to setback, and building a whole big huge thing in that envelope.
Yeah, and that might be where to address it. Yeah, I just wanted to know, and being able to communicate back to those citizens, the reason why you would stand pat on something like this versus adjusting it.
Well, and
So
I
that
just.
was very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, and I just add one thing to Kelly's point there, somewhere in the planning commission minutes, there was a comment that there's only been complaints on these 2 structures, and I've, thought about that for a couple of weeks. I think what it is a lot of people have concerns about some oversized buildings, but they assume that it's, to code, it's inspected, and this is what's allowed, and they're right. It does go through that. They don't think there's much they can do once it's built, so. But it seems to be, there's much more concern, over time. And I think this is a problem that could be around for the next, say, century, as homes continue to be rebuilt, and they'll probably be built bigger on the same lot.
Well, I mean, Bountiful's a hillside community, we're a hillside community, other hillside communities face the same things. It gets really challenging. If you think of, trying to think of a good example, maybe Heritage Hills, either the top part of Eastview Drive versus the cul-de-sac, I can't remember what it's called, at the bottom, that comes off of Heritage Hills Drive. The lot separation is like this. One's likely gonna have to cut some, one's likely gonna have to fill some, or their backyard is gonna be very steep, maybe a good sledding hill in the winter and good for nothing else. So it does become a little bit of a challenge in a hillside community. On the accessory buildings, we don't have a maximum square footage or anything like that. There's nothing that says, as long as you meet setbacks and meet the height requirements, you can build whatever building.
So you can make an accessory building that's larger than your main building. That's what our current ordinance. That doesn't seem
I mean,
right.
it doesn't come out and say that, but it doesn't say you can't. So one thought I had, like, on the horse barn or any other large barn, maybe if, accessory buildings are just handled through the building permit process. Maybe if a building is over a certain square foot threshold, that it needs to come through a review process through planning commission and city council. You'd have to outline some criteria, I think, because you couldn't just be arbitrary on those things. But at least it could look at some different components.
And I think we have two, we're addressing 2 things. We are addressing the accessory building topic, but back to the grade, and saying that there is no changes that need to be made to, I think you've said it's a 20-year-old. We've been doing it that way for 20 years, and to say there's no changes, I just wonder if maybe there are some, we just haven't found them yet. Maybe Bountiful's not the right model. Maybe Holiday's the right model. Maybe there's something we could take from Park City. It seems like when you're measuring grade, my understanding is are you measuring it from natural or improved also? Because then you can build up your grade and then you've still got 35 feet. But if we looked at it and said, let's look at natural and take an average, that would be a possible solution.
So Kelly didn't have the benefit of this discussion, and just as a refresher, some of the issues as we thought through that. Take a subdivision like the rigid Alpine. Natural grade in some areas is blown away. It's gone. So then what is natural grade if you're measuring from natural? And there's other areas that are the same way. And there's areas that would work great.
It's the grade from when the plat is filed and approved.
But I guess you could, we haven't required like a grading plan for the whole site. I know in California, they do it all the time. We haven't gotten down to that detail there.
And I have noticed when they put in these subdivisions, they do affect the grade even before the plats are formed. As they put in the roads, they're tearing up a little bit
Well,
and
and they
changing, they're flattening.
Because they have to meet the code of
Yes.
road grade and height, our elevation changes, what the grade is up to the stop sign, intersections, and those kind of things. There is always a change in what the natural grade is when it comes to the structure of it initially, the roads.
Yeah. Well, is it possible to do something where it's over a certain height or over a certain square footage, the setback has to be different than below a certain height, below a certain square footage, the setback can be normal? Because like I have a picture that you can't see here, but this is over in my neighborhood, my neck of the woods. This is like a 3-story metal barn that literally sits as far back as possible from the guy's home and right behind his neighbor's fence.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's actually painted this brown since then, so now it's not as noticeable, but it's massive. And I'm like, if I'm moving to Alpine, I'm paying $2 million for a home or whatever it is, and someone puts a big metal barn that they probably have a business in, like 10 feet away from my back fence, it's like.
Yeah, so we do, in our accessory building ordinance currently, we do have an increased setback requirement once you go beyond a certain height. So the way it's set up right now, if you meet, you can be up to 20 feet high on an accessory building to the ridge line. That's different than a home, but to the ridge line, if you meet the minimum setbacks, which I think are 10-foot side, 15 rear for accessory buildings in.
Yeah, so in most zones, other than the TR 10,000 zone, it's gonna be 15-foot rear, 10 feet on the sides. That's a standard setback. And then you get penalized, anything above 20.
Yeah, so you can go up to 30 feet high to the ridge line, but for every additional foot of height, you need 2 more foot of setback. So it pushes it more interior to the lot if you're going to go higher.
Right.
I think part of it though, I think what Shane said is maybe what we do is we limit the size of accessory buildings unless you're on certain acreage and then have the setbacks increase. But I think it should, a percentage of the building or whatever a set square footage is, and then have it go through the process so that you can review it and then go through and,
And shouldn't it have to be accessory to something?
It is, it's accessory to the main use of the land.
Okay, but let's have it, can we clarify
Say
and
that there
say an
needs to
accessory
be
to
a
a
home.
structure?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I don't
no, a
think to
residence.
land is, in my mind, that's really open. Like, if we're gonna have an accessory building, it needs to be an accessory building to another building.
You mean to a residence, not
Right.
just.
Yeah, to a residence.
So to that point, I mean, if they built the barn and there was a house next to it, would that have changed your perspective of the size of that barn and how it impacts the neighbors? Probably not. But the barn, I think one of the problems with the barn too is just the sheer size of the property that they're building it on. I think it's over 5 acres, maybe bigger. And so because it's such a large expanse of land, that building can go for couple hundred feet or whatever. And so then to build a building pad, you have to bring in all this fill dirt. And so that was kind of that was a unique situation, I guess is what I'm trying to say is.
But Kelly's got it in his neighborhood, so it's not unique because we're gonna continue to see it repeated unless we decide we don't want to see it repeated
So
from an accessory dwelling perspective.
So I agree. I think as Mayor said, this is a kind of it's an easy one. There may be other issues, but the accessory structure is one that's pretty easy to address. There's some parameters we could set. We could say if it's above a certain size, but it's when people put in a huge barn or a backyard warehouse or a, above ground gymnasium and I think we're just seeing some of those and more of them. Then it goes through an additional review where we say, hey, you maybe need more setback, or I think it's sight lines, it's setbacks or whatever. And, because it's different from a shed, which is kind of what we talk about, right? That's a maximum of 200 square feet. So.
Yeah. So speaking of the sheds, we've got the ordinance that's a year or so old with the accessory buildings. I'm not saying we made the wrong decision to go that route, but it's created quite a few issues. So there's not everybody, but a higher percentage of people now are building in easements and we get 3 different types of letters from utility companies, and one's a complete abandonment of the easement, one's Marla knows this better than I do, like a temporary, they have to move it if they need it, and there's a third one, I don't remember what it is, but I know she hates it. She would like to see us go back to what we had before, because we're just getting more buildings closer to the property line. But we're dealing with what we have. We've got a swimming pool right now that's built 2 foot. They didn't get a permit, but it's built within just over 2 foot from the property line.
So what's happening with that?
We sent them comments. The way it is right now, we do have an issue that we're going to address. Our accessory building section of our ordinance doesn't really differentiate between an above ground building or structure and something that sits below ground. So technically, a swimming pool on a corner lot would have to be set 40 feet back from the front and the side, which doesn't really seem fair. It's below ground, it's not obstructing a view of someone and those things. So we'll be taking some kind of cleanup ordinances to the planning commission, and they'll end up here addressing some of those issues.
Right, so what happens? They built a pool, they built it too close.
So
What's the repercussions?
Yeah, I mean, the pool, what they've done on that is they've used that ordinance that we passed last year, the accessory building ordinance, and they said, well, this is an accessory structure. And according to the ordinance that you guys adopted last year, we can now put this within 2 feet of the property line, as long as it's no taller than 12.5 feet, and it's below grade. So we're gonna put it 2.5 feet right next to the property line.
But they do have to go and it's built, but they do now have to go back and try to get the utility company to sign off on easements that would allow them to build in that easement.
Okay, so we've got. Is there any more discussion? Are we ready for a motion or no? Or do you have direction for staff? I will entertain any of those.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we maintain the height, the grading requirements, the city's height and grading requirements as proposed by the planning commission to remain the same.
I'll second.
There's been a motion by Lon, second by Greg Gordon.
But I
Any
think
discussion?
some good guidance to staff is I think we should look at it, the accessory structure for some modification, some way that we don't have an unforeseen, huge barn that's, uphill from the neighbors and some of these situations, that or some other option. But I think a square footage seems like an easy way to address it, and then put in some parameters that are fair, or, you know, maybe it even goes to city council every time it's, you know, massive. I don't know.
And then maybe cleaning up our ordinances, also stating that a pool is not considered within the accessory structure and that they have to follow the outlines for a pool and that it does not qualify as an accessory structure. So we don't have that in the future. Anything else from it, Jason?
I would say, I mean, what's good about, I mean, the purpose on those things is try to work with citizens, and if there are problems that are happening, because we're getting different forms back from different easements, you know, different utilities on the vacating of the easement, I think we just need to go back and say, okay, what do we need? I still think we should let them go to the utilities and get permission to, you know, because that's, I still like that a lot, but if we're finding that we're getting a bunch of different ones, like I kind of hear you say, 3 different kinds, let's determine what it has to be and modify our ordinance and put it in there to clean it up even more.
Yeah.
I don't think the pool thing has to do anything with that because that's breaking the law anyway, but
Yeah.
I think we can fix, I mean, I'm glad we still did it, and I'm sorry it caused a little trouble because we're trying to let people use their property better. Let's just modify up the ordinance to see what exactly is required so that there's not ambiguity. or
Okay,
confusion.
but what I'm hearing from Austin though is they're not technically breaking the law because technically it's considered an accessory dwelling because we
On a-
don't have ordinances
On a pool.
that are worded specifically enough. I don't know what's wrong with my tongue today. Specifically enough to be able to exclude pools
Yeah.
as an accessory structure.
So do we
We have to
need-
be that finite.
Do we need an ordinance on pools?
Yeah.
That defines it?
That's what we're working on
Okay.
now.
So
Yeah.
Kelly, do you have anything that you want to know?
No, I think that's it. The only thing is you're looking at these things, I would, like, I'm not, I want them to use their land how they want, but I think is they start to obstruct or obscure other people, I think that's the issue. So to me, square footage isn't as much as it is finding some sort of setback and height factor that works.
Yeah.
Cause I'll show you this picture after, but if this is the setback and height, if it's working, it's probably not
Yeah.
working for.
Probably like if it's
Yeah.
anything, I think, because when we did it, it was the shed ordinance. I thought, or was it just an accessory ordinance that we changed? Because I thought it was for shed, because it's for things, it's for structures that don't have electricity. It's for structure,
200 square feet.
right, 100 square feet. So that wouldn't apply to
Yeah,
the
this thing's.
200 feet.
that
That's to
would
an
be
accessory.
opposite
That's a
structure.
totally different one.
It's up to 12.5 feet.
So that's
tall,
something
yeah.
that, you know, I would have you work with Austin and work on that.
Okay.
Okay, and then Jessica?
I'll just say again, I think there are probably some modifications that we could make to change it, that ordinance.
Do you have anything specific?
I would want to just take a look at Holiday and see how they're balancing.
So let's do this. Let's vote on this ordinance. And if there is something else that if you want to find from Holiday, maybe we could amend this in the future.
Okay.
But right now we have a motion and a second. Are we ready for a vote? Okay, let's vote. All in favor of
Maintaining the current ordinance.
yes, where is that? Is there a number for this?
I think it's, no, we're
Okay,
not
so-
changing the page.
Okay,
34.
you're right. So all in favor of keeping the city mode in the city to continue the existing height and grading ordinances as currently written?
But why do we have to vote to keep something the same?
Oh, actually,
The
we don't
reason
need to.
because this has been on many agendas, and so we need to
Brings
have some
closure.
kind of a closure to it
Okay.
in the minutes. and
So
the
you're
rec-
saying-
for record
Basically,
purposes.
You
it's a
say you
motion
made a
of no
motion
one.
of no action?
Yeah, no action. So basically, that's what we're doing.
It-
Yeah, I get it.
It kind of signifies the staff, hey, I know
We're not
the
doing
wheels
this.
have been turning on this for 6 months.
So I would, let's vote on this and then for Jessica, if she would like to move forward on it, maybe explore other options, but let's vote on the sample for no action. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, passes 4-1. Okay, staff reports. Chiefs. Chief Patton?
So the ambulance that we ordered that was gonna get here in October, it came today.
Wow.
We got an ambulance. We'll get it in service, we'll bring it. Hopefully we won't.
Mhm. Austin?
Just really quick, the planning commission will be having a training with the state ombudsman on the 15th. And he'll be going over some land use issues, specifically ADUs, short-term rentals, moderate income housing, and reasonable accommodations. So we'll be looking at those things at that meeting.
Okay, and Craig?
Just want to encourage everybody to log in to the league LPC meetings on Monday for information. Shane and I were on the call on Monday, yesterday, and it's good to be kept up to date. It would be good to every once in a while go through the list of the bills to see if anyone jumps out, to see if it applies to us. It's still early in the session. Many bills have not been filed. Some are still protected. But land use and water are the big issues. And local authority or lack thereof.
Yeah, no, for sure. Bonnie?
Just so everybody's aware that they're gonna have the spring trail cleanup, April 23rd at 8 AM. I'm gonna put it in the news line, but just so you can get word out.
Do they know where it's gonna take place?
I assume they're all gonna meet the same place that they usually meet and then set up from there.
Okey-doke. Okay, Shane?
Okay, Austin, did those pictures come through that I emailed you? You can look for those while I address something else here. I had AT&T approach me about co-locating on the city cell tower in Lambert Park. So when that was built, it was built for 3 carriers. For quite a few years, we just had one, and then I was talking to Verizon one day and said, hey, we got issues with coverage, and they said, well, where can we build a tower? And told them there's an existing one, and eventually they ended up co-locating there. We haven't went out and recruited others for the 3rd spot. AT&T came to us, started asking questions about locations and things that they could potentially go. They found out about this and they're very interested in that. They're also interested in potentially being here. We put them in contact with Verizon. And so we'll see what they come back with, but we bring more information back to a future council meeting on that. I sent the email out about the Utah League of Cities and Towns conference. We've heard back from several of you. So if you'd like to go, let Carolyn know and she'll get you registered there. I think I mentioned a few council meetings ago that we would be putting a gate up in Three Falls below the upper tank. So you come off that last cul-de-sac, drive up the road, and then there's this wood fencing, and we put it there kind of at the end of the wood fencing. It's right where, I don't know what the trail's called, but it's right where the trail crosses there. So it'll keep people out of the kind of more dangerous area by the tank and things. So just notifying the council of that.
Was that instigated by or requested by people up there? I know I've seen things in front of that road going up there, cones and stuff, or.
I think those are the contractor temporarily. Like they had a requirement to put some kind of road base or something on that road. What we ended up doing is putting the roto-mill chips from our overlay project. We didn't pay for it. We just kind of coordinated with the developer and our contractor to get that up there.
Do we pay for the fence, gate?
We did the gate, yes. We felt like it needed to be there. We have had some vandalism on the solar panels at our tank up there that gives power to our level monitoring equipment.
Is there a trail that comes up off of there for hiking or
Yeah, it's right
Okay.
by this gate.
So the intent is you could still just go around the side here, but what about, I mean, does anyone go park up here on the side? Is that
They
the-
do, and if just beyond that gate, there's like a significant drop off, and if someone was up there screwing around or whatever, it could be a really bad situation. So this gates it off before that. If you remember on the plat, where you come off the cul-de-sac, the lots come together, but there's I can't remember what kind of an easement is listed on the plat. You remember the meeting, I'll bet, Jason, when we talked about that. It's like I don't know if it says pedestrian, it's something public access easement or something like that. So there's access, it's not denying access. It's just no vehicular access beyond that point. So Austin, where the trail comes through the oak brush right there, that's where the gate is. So just up where the road bends, all that fill area, that's a significant drop off right there. So.
That's not forbidden, right?
Yeah, it's forbidden.
Yeah.
So you're saying it doesn't stop that public access, because I remember that was an important access point up to kind of the Hemagog area.
Yeah, there's, you can get a bike through there or whatever.
Yeah, I think the main thing is there's been vandalism up there and they're trying to discourage that.
Yeah. And down, Austin, go back down the road. I'll just leave the drawing where it was. Right there. So about where the numbers are, about right there. The lot to the left of his cursor, that lot ends about where he was right there on the road. So beyond that, it's public open space. So anyway. So we did get some further clarification on the ARPA funds. There's this kind of automatic revenue loss exemption that I mentioned before that I wanted to get more information on. Others have picked up on it as well, and now the person that the league hired to help cities with ARPA funds is recommending to all cities that they take this option if they can. Some are getting more than the 10 million minimum exemption there, but it basically throws it into the category of like the CARES Act funds, where we can spend it on general government operations without restrictions. There's a little bit of further clarification that other cities are asking for, but I believe we could take that money, use it for some operations money, take the money that was budgeted there and drill the irrigation well that we had suggested. So that's an item that the council would need to vote on. But that's what we would suggest to shore up our water system for the future. So we'll bring additional clarification on that as we get it. I mentioned before the city hall roof. We've got kind of a draft bid package put together, but does the council have strong feelings one way or another on roof type here?
So the shaker is, I think, what everyone's used to, and it is a historical building, right? But yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah. Definitely
got
need
bids for
quality
both, right?
control because we have it now, and the roofing guys I've had up looking at it said you can look through the shake shingles and see tar paper or whatever. So I don't know that it was done properly from day one, but it's lasted, 20 something years.
I was gonna say, I feel like inherently the shake shingles they don't last as long.
They're a
because of
problem. The wind
material.
blows and then
Yeah.
the staples start rattling out.
I think that's why they called shake.
It definitely happens. I mean, we've got,
I mean, personally, I think the shake shingles look better. But there's that cost. And then as far as the reliability and sustainability of that is different. You know, you look at the difference, there's a huge cost difference, right, between the different materials. But I'm wondering, is there something else that we can do that can mimic it, but maybe isn't
There
You
is
know,
a
is there-
product,
a resin or something?
I actually have a sample of it. It's made to, it's like a metal panel, but it's in the shape of shake. In fact, the vet clinic down here by the roundabout has this roof system on it. Can't remember what it's called, but take a look at that one
Okay.
and see. They would be better to look at that than the sample that I have on this little board.
Because I mean, I would like it to look like that, but I don't know if I actually like the material, so for longevity.
Do you think if you're redoing the fire station and, you know, do something consistent?
It'd be nice. Right now, it's asphalt, right? Chief, I'm pretty sure it's asphalt shingles, the part that has a pitch.
I think so.
Yeah, what's shown on the concept drawings is like a standing seam metal roof. It would be nice to be consistent since the buildings are so close together.
Is there a way to do, like, let's, yeah, you know what, I'll take that offline. Go ahead.
Okay, take a look at that down there. We can talk again and then we can bid some options into it too. We have looked at an option for a trail connection to Draper. I don't know if that's something you'd want to look at here or if you want me to send it out and let you look at it through an email. You tell me.
Yeah, I think we'll know a lot after next Tuesday's meeting that Highland has. I believe they're voting on something
Okay.
that would affect the way that we connect.
Yeah. And ours could happen. It's all on
Right.
city property. Ours could happen even if something else is there. So maybe I'll just send it out and you can look at it, see what you think.
That'd be great.
Okay. And then Craig mentioned LPC. Yeah, there's a lot going on. A lot of hot topics, so should be a fun legislative session.
A lot. Okay, anything else, Shane?
Nope.
Lon?
Yeah, speaking of that, the Utah Lake Authority bill went public today. I don't know how you say it, but it's on the floor, I guess, being worked on. And we'll see how that rolls. It's been quite controversial for a little while. And they think they've got all the bugs worked out of it to make it work. Well, we'll see how it actually works because there will be funding.
That's to be taken over by the state, right? As opposed to,
Correct.
how much of that is that going to take away from the Utah Lake Authority?
Well, so from the Utah Lake Commission.
Yeah, yeah.
The Utah Lake Authority will be the new entity,
Right,
but
but the commission,
but the commission, it'll be a 15-member board that 8 of the board members will be members from Utah County, city, certain cities. We will probably not have a seat on that board. It will more than likely be lakefront cities that will sit on that board where they have specific interest. But Rich tonight, the Timpanogus Special Service District, really, we are part of the Special Service District, which means that it really does impact us as to what is decided on what type of quality of water goes into that based on what then our district has to improve the sewer system cleaning.
So the upside is it will increase, if it goes to the state and it goes to this, it will increase funding for Utah Lake.
It will increase
which will be
funding.
great. The downside is we'll have less of a say, right? Because if
Correct.
we don't have a seat at the table, we don't have as much of a say. So that's the way I looked at it. Do you see anything else other than that?
Yeah, no, I think it's actually a good direction. Especially after they have worked out some of the issues that these lakefront cities
Right.
have. I mean, they talked about taking total control over a half mile in from the lake and taking zoning and everything away from the city that has rights there currently. And so there was some real issues in the beginning. I think they worked it out. It seems good. Everyone that was had a seat at the table had their concerns addressed, and Brady Brammer has been doing really good at moving through with that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Jessica?
This week, the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation opened up their grant cycle. It opened on the 18th and it closes in March. And so I've been talking with Shane and Austin to see if there's some things that we would qualify for as a city. They've got a few categories. One of them is they do restoration. So we're looking to see if there's anything that would fit in the restorative. They're also doing just a tier 1 for new trails. They'll match up to $200,000. So it's some significant money. If we've got some things that you want to talk about, I've been in contact with them and they're kind of guiding me through the best way to approach this grant cycle. It seems like once you build the relationships and you work through and you can start writing, applying for good grants through the recreation department, there's always funding there. It's kind of an untapped area that I think we've been missing out on, especially with how important trails and outdoor recreation is to Alpine.
Oh, that's great. If you can follow through on that and then periodically report back, that would be great. Anything else?
That's it.
Kelly?
Nothing for me.
Greg? Jason? I just had 2 things. Code enforcement, where we were at hiring for that. And then also with the excess of ARPA funds pouring into the state and the county, is there any way we can capitalize or any way that we can find out whether we can get access to some of those funds for some of our infrastructure needs, whether it's the firehouse or some of our water needs, whether it's increasing our culinary capacity? I know you said there was a second round, but is there something like that? It seems like everybody's getting their funding coming through. Are we exploring all, I just don't know. I just know that there's money out there, and why not? Why not us?
Yeah, so the league is working with the state to try to have a second round from state money.
Right, but what about the county?
The county money, Jed was in a meeting the other day, Commissioner Lee was there, that topic came up. He sounded like he was open to anything. It sounded like they would look more at regional type projects than something that's specific to one little area.
So then they're probably thinking of the gravel pit then, right? Is that?
That's one thing that they're looking at.
Okay.
Yes. But there is potential for other projects as well, so.
That's it for me. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Adjourn. Oh, I did not do good. I went 45 hours.